Hey, welcome to another episode of the Not Scrum Done podcast. I'm your co host, Andreanna Marshall, and that is my amazing co host.
Grand Scrum Master Scott.
Today, we're going to talk about how to continue to grow your skills and stay sharp after a layoff. This is a question that we've gotten from a few different people over the last few months, and we wanted to help those out that may be struggling in a layoff situation. Maybe you're currently struggling with a layoff or have been through one. We want to give you some practical advice. First, we'll start with a story from Scott, and then we'll go into some practical advice to get better, be able to bounce back faster. Scott, you want to kick us off with your experience with a layoff?
Absolutely, Andriana. Greetings, listeners. Yes, yes, being laid off is never a good feeling. Back then, when I got laid off for the first time, they call them pink slips. I'm dating myself. Pink slips. They would literally give you a pink slip. I'm working hard throughout that day. I get in at early in the morning at 9 o'clock, and about 4:30, I got called to my manager's office, and there I got my pink slip. What's this? Budget cuts. We're going to have to lay you off. Like, oh my goodness. Everything was going through my mind. The only other time I had that experience in life was when I got my first traffic ticket in terms of the anxiety that I was feeling. I remember when I got my first traffic ticket, I got pulled aside the road and I'm sweating bullets. Got stopped over for speeding. So I'm sitting there in that manager's office. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I got a child. I got a wife, no job. I was one of those persons at that time. I'm in my 20s. I'm just getting my career started. We got a house, we got children, all those things. And I'm living from paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, she was working, but we still both was living from paycheck to paycheck at that time. And oh my God, what am I going to do? And that day, I did not feel good. I began to tap into resources, Unemployment Security Commission. We pay insurance for that, and I check each and every pay period, depending upon when you get paid. But we don't think about it until you have to use that. And I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, that is a humbling experience to be in a line with other people. You have to go down there and physically look for jobs. First of all, you got to apply. And then, of course, what you get is not going to be enough to maybe just take care of your basic bills like water. It's not going to cover a whole lot. So you're dealing with less money. You're feeling like you're being humiliated. You're giving yourself all this time and energy to a company. And how dare they just let you go like that after all you have given them? Blood, sweat, and tears. Very humbling experience. I remember that very vividly. I remember going there. Part of what you have to do when you have unemployment insurance, getting that check, is you have to go apply for jobs. You have to be actively looking. I remember going to the office and sitting there all day applying for jobs and going back home, talking to my wife. How did it go today? Just feeling you got to look at your significant other in the face like, nah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But luckily, that helps us to get more spiritual because we both was Christians saying, hey, this is just another test, it's another trial, another tribulation. I finally did get back to work. And when I got back to work this time, oh, you can best believe that now I've gone through that experience. Oh, I got a different mindset. I got a different game plan, Andriana, as I'm sure we will discuss throughout this here video in terms of giving some people some things that they can do to not necessarily lay off proof yourself, but to make sure your family is protected, irregardless of whatever happens. I was glad I went through that journey from that standpoint because it took me away from living from paycheck to paycheck and really just helped me to see as far as I can possibly see into the future and plan for every possible thing that I can possibly think of. So, in hindsight, I'm thankful for that situation. But of course, in the real time, it's like the end of the world.
And I think that's a really great point that you made when you said we can't make sure that you're layoff proof. What we're trying to do is give you some tips so that you can bounce back quick or be in a much more secure place. I want to start with the number one thing is applying to jobs because you mentioned that you have to go apply to jobs even when you're getting services. The part that I want to bring up here is the positivity that you have to go through this because you can see as of late, and even when I was starting off my career, you have to apply to hundreds of jobs in order to get one. So the number one thing is continue to seek, do not get discouraged, stay positive in the moment. One of the things that I absolutely hate is when people like, you're not alone in this, but also you're not alone in this. Like that is the job market. And in some instances, we're out of that like golden era where people were hiring left and right. Budgets are a lot tighter. A lot of companies are not hiring as many people as they were 2, 3, 4 years ago at this particular point. The other thing that I want to mention is networking and skill development. Networking is key I worked at a former company and I still kept in touch with everyone. The company ended up shutting down in 2020. So people were reaching out. I was calling people to get them in front of recruiters and hiring managers, helping them get interviews, giving recommendations. That's what you build a network for. So, networking, I'll say, if you don't have a big network now, no matter what position you're in, you need to be building that network because you may need them one day. We're all going to need people in the future. Most jobs are still filled by referrals. Take a look, make sure that you're building your network skill development. Even I'm still working on my skills. I went from really understanding Scrum to then traditional project management and now to AWS cloud. Constantly be refining your skills, getting better. There's facilitation, there's backlog management techniques, there's evidence-based management. We teach those courses and help you actually develop and grow your skills. And then the last thing I'll go into, and then Scott, I'll kick it to you, is getting professional support, whether that's a career counselor, a therapist, and so forth. Get the help that you need, reaching out to people. Our LinkedIn inboxes get a lot of people and sometimes even spam. But if you don't hear from us once, keep messaging us. We will respond as long as you're not selling us PMP tests like these random people are. Like, as long as you're genuinely asking for help, we'll eventually respond. It takes us a little while to get through it. Scott, you mentioned this already, which is you're living paycheck to paycheck. So I think it's probably best for you to talk about how people can do better financial planning and having an emergency fund.
That's a beautiful point, Andriana. One more thing I wanted to mention on before I get there is I'm thinking about mindfulness and stress management. You're gonna be going through an awful lot of stress during this time, and it's hard to you're gonna need real good people in your life. You're gonna need to, if you're a spiritual person, tap into your spiritual aspect. Go to church. Just make sure that you are grounded spiritually, mentally, physically, psychologically, all that. Can't stress that enough. Now, when it comes to financial planning, at that particular phase of my life, I was in debt. I had the nicest car, I had the nicest house. You get the idea. Just getting out of college. So, I financed that. So I got all kinds of debt, every which way but loose. I got introduced to some program, Dave Ramsey program, getting out of debt. So me and my wife, we talked about that at the time and we was okay, cool. Now that I'm back at work, thank goodness. It's not the money I was making before. I had to take a pay cut, but hey, I'm humble. Hey, I got to feed my family. I got to take care of my family. I don't care what I got to do. Now we being very strategic about our money and being very intentional how we operate and move forward. So Dave Ramsey went through his program. We did. It was a nice way to go through things in terms of getting out of debt. I didn't use everything out of it. I like to use programs like that to pick and choose what I like because some things we already doing. Others like, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? Okay, great. So we got on a plan like that. And we've heard many years ago that you should have 6 months worth of salary in the bank. So we learned that in business school. We both went to business school. So that was the first time we heard that. But now I'm reading stuff that says, no, you should have about a year or two of income in the bank in case if something happens. But I never thought of that. Okay, honey, how do we get to the stage like that? Okay, so we begin to work on a plan of doing those things. And it's hard because all your money go to bills and you thinking like, I was the type of person like, what is $100 going to do? Now, my wife, she was very frugal at the time. She would save a penny. And to her, a penny was a big deal. But to me, penny, oh my God, are you kidding me? What is that going to do? So we began to save maybe whatever we could. Let's say $100 a month. And at the end of that year, I'm beginning to see that $100 is $1,200 plus we put in some type of interest bearing account. And it was actually more than that, it's maybe $1,500. And we kept discipline year after year. It didn't just go, it multiplied. I'm like, oh my God. I knew about compound interest, but now 2 or 3 years later, I can see it. And now I've built up this muscle in terms of saving each and every month. And the bank account is growing. I'm get worried about the emergency fund first. And then while we paying off bills and just things like that. So there's levels to this. First thing is manage your debt, see where you're at, and still figure out a way how you and your family can save something. I promise you, you can figure it out. Do we have to cut some stuff? Yeah, we have to cut some stuff. But you got to be thinking like, okay, is what I'm doing today worth me sacrificing my potential future? So we never thought about that until this situation happened. So I think if you think like that, I think you will land in a good place in terms of your financial planning. And again, as Andreanna said, reach out to us. We have conversations on those type of topics. Hey, we don't know everything about financial planning. That's why we look to experts, and we look to other peers to get advice. Hey, what you doing with your money? What's good? What's not? What are you thinking? So those are conversations to have with people who you feel comfortable having that conversation with. But just be transparent about that. And doesn't that align with Scrum and Agile? We want to be transparent. Thank goodness for that experience.
When you talked about having a little bit more money after the tech layoffs early in 2023, people were taking about 6 months to find a job. Some a little bit longer, but the average that I heard was about 6 months. Continue reading, continue learning. There's a lot of stuff out there. You mentioned Dave Ramsey. We're not necessarily endorsing or saying that we agree 100%, but that's one of those options. There's the book, The Psychology of Money, very popular. I've heard a lot of different podcasts with the author. Great content in the book, really great information that he's providing just on the way we think about money and how we behave, because it's not about math, it's about how we behave. And math isn't the reason you got the nicest car. Let's be honest. Hopefully you got some really good strategies and takeaways. We gave you some ideas and some skills to learn, building up your network, a little bit about financial planning to help you have that little cushion if a layoff does happen, or if you're going through it and you need some lessons learned, and not to be discouraged throughout the process. If you made it to the end of this video, that means you have an attention span greater than a goldfish. Thanks for watching.
Be legendary, everyone, but not Scrum down. See you in the next episode.